quick story, yes? So there was a lady of affluence. She was doing very well for herself at her place of work, in her business actually. And then she met this man. It was like a match made in heaven. He was absolutely perfect. And everything went great. So she started to trust him. I mean, for her to have gotten to that level, do you understand, in her business, she's not a stupid person, right? So they met, everything was fine, everything was absolutely great. And she trusted him and they got married. After they got married, everything changed. He started to treat her like crap, intentionally. So what he was planning to do was set her up. So he did set her up, obviously. Things were going so bad. And he started to send men into her life, right? So he set her up with other men, and being the only person that had given her any sort of listening ear or whatever, she fell for it. So as soon as she did that, he took her to court for infidelity, and the plan was to take her half of everything she had. Now, after that happened, because of the trust and the love she had for this man, she couldn't believe it when she found out that everything was actually planned. She lost her mind. Watch out for Haman. We all know who Haman is, right? Right. Some of us do, but not all of us. For those who don't, Haman is a character in the Bible. Now, for the benefit of those that are just stumbling upon my page for the first time ever, I tend to use characters that are accessible. So even if you don't know the story, you can pick up a Bible and read it in the book of Esther. Or not. You can actually just look it up online, right? So let's do a quick recap, about the character Haman. So Haman happens to be one of the king's men, right? So the king promoted him above all the princes. So he became second in command to the king. And as soon as that happened, he became very prideful. He became very egotistical. He felt like he was better than everybody else. When he walked in, people worshipped him. All the princes, they bowed down to him. Everybody did, except one man. The man's name, Mordecai. That's a quick recap about who Haman is. Now let's get to the rest of it. So, a character like Haman doesn't just walk into our lives except through disobedience. Now, disobedience can look something like, you see all the red flags in a relationship, but you carry on anyway. You know this person is probably abusive. You know this person maybe verbally, maybe physically, maybe mentally, maybe emotionally, but you just ignore it and you kind of keep dating the person anyway, and then go on to marry the person. Why? Because maybe age, maybe society, maybe status, or whatever it is, and you ignore it. Then you know that the friends you hang out with, the company you keep, they're shady people, but then you ignore it because, well, you have your 9 to 5 or your business. You're not shady, so you don't really care what they do with their time, until you're actually guilty by association, right? Be honest, we've all been disobedient at some point or the other in our lives, right? We've all done it. We've all done something that we know is wrong, but we do it anyway because maybe it just feels good at the time. Now, the problem with having a Haman-like character in your life is that this doesn't go away except through prayer and fasting. We'll get to that in a minute. But let me explain to you, first of all, how Haman got into the lives of the Jews. Now, 700 years before then, at the time of King Saul, God had instructed King Saul to wipe out the Amalekites. Now, the Amalekites were really evil. They did evil things, sacrificed babies and all sorts of things, right? So God had instructed King Saul to wipe out all the Amalekites and not leave a single person. But for some weird reason, he spared King Agag, which was the king, right? Now, at the time, maybe as souvenir, because at the time, in those days, like when people went to war, they would come back with souvenirs. Now, souvenirs could be maybe the women, they would wife them up, maybe the children, they would make them slaves or whatever it is. So maybe he spared King Agag as some sort of souvenir, and he disobeyed God, right? Now, 700 years later, Haman happens to be an Agagite, a direct descendant of King Agag. So now I guess you can understand his inherent hatred for the Jews. He may not even know the story, but he hated the Jews for whatever reason, because it wasn't just even about Mordecai. He wanted to destroy all the Jews. Now, Mordecai that he wanted to destroy happened to be a Jew, but it wasn't that obvious because his name Mordecai wasn't a Jewish name. Now, Mordecai derived his name when at another time when a certain Babylonian king, King Nebuchadnezzar, had laid siege against Jerusalem and adopted tens and thousands of Jews and took them back to Babylon. Now, in Babylon, they actually worship idols. Now, Jewish people do not bow down to false gods. Now, if you remember the story, or you can look it up if you don't know about it, of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had been put into a furnace of fire to burn them up because they refused to bow down to an idol. So Jewish people normally, because they serve God, they would refuse. They don't bow down to idols. So when King Nebuchadnezzar had abducted Jewish people and taken them back to Babylon, they wanted to absorb them into the culture. And they wanted them to forget about their names and their home and their religion. So they gave them Babylonian names to indoctrinate them and absorb them into the Babylonian culture. Now, Marduk happens to be, the name Marduk is of a false Babylonian god, hence where Mordecai got his name, Mordecai. 700 years later, due to disobedience, Haman was back in the lives of the Jews to destroy them. Now, I'm not just talking about this topic today. I'm talking about it because I used to be one of the most disobedient people you can ever come across. So trust me, I've dealt with my fair share of Hamans. But the thing is, when you have characters like this in your life, sometimes it gets bigger than you. Most of the time, you have to resort to fasting and prayer to do away with all the chaos and the destruction they have caused in your life. So what I will do today is actually use the character and what actually happened to help you identify what a Haman character would look like in your life. So if you do have such people in your life, you can quickly know how to distance yourself, before the damage is done. Number one, the king promoted Haman and he became very prideful, very haughty. So these are people in your life that are very, very prideful people. These are very, very arrogant people. They think they are better than everybody else. They look down on people, talk down on people, and it might seem funny. But the problem with it is highly likely they believe they are better than you. Now, if you offend them, should you offend them, even without your own knowledge, their ego is so big that they cannot forgive you. They can't let it go. Do you understand? Because they feel and they believe you're beneath them. So they have to do something to you to get you back. Point 2. Mordecai did not acknowledge Haman, and he damn near lost his mind. He lost his mind so much so that he wasn't seeking to only destroy Mordecai. He wanted to destroy an entire tribe, all the Jews. Now, these are people in your life that if you don't acknowledge them, like say you see them outside or something, you don't greet them properly, you're in trouble. Now, these are people that if you break up with them, you're in trouble. So their mindset is like, how you broke up with me? What are you talking about? You blocked me, you broke up with me, you're not talking to me. What are you talking about? I don't understand it. If you stop being friends with them, ooh, there's hell to pay. Now, the thing is, you can actually outgrow friends, right? Sometimes the way you outgrow clothes, you can outgrow friends. Why? Because you can become a bit more mature. Do you understand? And then you lot don't have things in common anymore. But these are people that their mindset is such that, oh, you stop talking to me, you're not picking my calls, watch me destroy your life. Let me tell you a quick story, right? There was something I was looking at, and this guy had talked about, okay, so he had started dating a girl for a month, right? And the girl was in his house, so he had to go away for the weekend, maybe for a meeting or whatever. And he said where he was, the network was quite bad. Now, that could be true or it could be false. I would believe that if you feel somebody is a cheat, within 1 month of relationship, you can always walk away. I mean, the relationship isn't, do you understand? You can walk away from it. When the guy got back from his trip, what had happened was she had trashed his entire house because she could not get through to him. Crazy. She had trashed everything, his TV, his car, the entire house, trashed his entire house, all for the sake of his phone was turned off or the network was bad and she could not get in touch with him. So she felt he was cheating, and in her mind she's thinking, how dare you, I'm calling you, you're not picking up your calls. And she thought somehow she had the right to break everything in his house when you can simply pick up your bag and walk away. Point 3, Haman went to the king and lied about the Jews. He told the king that these were evil people. They were devil worshippers. They didn't acknowledge the king. They were doing this. Mind you, this was actually his tribe and his bloodline he was referring to, right? Now, these are people that, should anything happen and things go wrong between you, then they start to go around to tell people, oh, this person did this. This person, half the time, what they're lying about is what they do. 99% of the time, what they're saying you did is what they actually do. Now, I often say that when things go wrong, the people that run out first to go and cry wolf are usually the aggressors. 90% of the time, these are people that are the aggressors. But what they're trying to do is garner sympathy for themselves. Like, they want people to sympathize with them, to feel bad for them, to feel sorry for them, and think the other person is evil. Do you understand? That's why they run out very quickly. I mean, like I said, 90% of the time. 5% of the time is probably because the other person has clout. So one person comes out to say, this is my side of the story, because once people hear that other person's side of the story, nobody will listen to them anymore. So, but like I said, 90% of the time, the people that are quick to run out to call friends and family and this person and run here and run there and say, oh, this is what happened, most of the time, these are the culprits. These are the real aggressors. Point 4, with the king's consent, Haman sent out letters to all the provinces and to cities and set a date for all the Jews to be destroyed, to be killed, to be destroyed, to be this, to be that, you know. So these are the people that, like I said, something goes wrong between you guys, friendship, relationship, whatever it is, then they call friends, they call families, they do this. Sometimes they go on social media. What they're trying to do is, they're not trying to fight you alone. They're trying to gather a mob against you. They're trying to gather an entire crew against you, because they don't want to fight you alone. They want everybody to fight you as well. So that's why they go, they lie to those people, they get their sympathy and turn everybody against you. And finally, Haman built gallows to hang Mordecai. Now, gallows is like a wooden cross that looks like one which Jesus Christ was crucified on. So basically, what he wanted to do was crucify Mordecai. Now, the gallows was supposed to be about 50 cubits high. The reason the measurement is so important is because, now, the place where the royal palace is called Shushan. Yes? Now, the city where Haman lives is called Susa, and that's a flat area. Now, that's where the police, where they can actually build the gallows. Yes? Now, Shushan happens to be on a mount in a higher place, right? It's about 15 meters higher than the city. So what Haman wanted to do, because the king's wife, Esther, had invited Haman and the king to a feast. So what Haman wanted to do was, whilst he was sitting back at the king's palace having a feast, don't forget, Shushan, which is the royal palace, is 15 meters higher than the city itself. So whilst he's sitting there feasting with the king and Queen Esther, he wanted to look at Mordecai whilst he was being crucified, which was why he raised the gallows to 50 cubits high. Does that make any sense? So he wanted to get a good view of it. You know, that's why he raised the gallows. He wanted to see them crucifying. He wanted to see the life drop out of him. Now, these are people in your life that want front row to your destruction. Now, they have lit a fire. They have lit a match. They just want to see the fire burn you down. They want front row to your downfall. They want to see you lose your credibility. They want to, I mean, they've lied to everybody, right? So they want to see you lose your credibility. They want to see you lose your friends, lose your job, lose your home. They want front row to that stuff. If you've ever heard of the saying, obedience is better than sacrifice, all they are saying is, choose to do right. Choose to stand for what is right. Sometimes it won't be fun. A lot of times you will lose people places and things. But it's always better to be obedient rather than later running around helter-skelter to try to quench the fire and destruction it has caused in your life. Namaste.